Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to my 3 Takeaways episode from the Dr. Mark Goulston interview that I did this past Monday. This was definitely one of those interviews that kind of went everywhere. Dr. Mark Goulston really kind of pulled out a lot of different tips and strategies that he just kind of knows from doing so much study on the subject of listening and communicating with others, and kind of compiled them all into this one episode. And I was a little bit frustrated during the interview, just a couple of times, because there are so many times that I go in with a outlook on how exactly I see the interview going and kind of the arc of the path of the interview, and it wasn't going like that because he was kind of going and jumping all these different places. But I really made sure to, while the interview was going on, be like, wait, this is okay that it's going all these places because it's super helpful tips and it's things that are going to be valuable to the listeners. So instead of me being like selfish in a sense that like it wasn't going the way that I wanted it and trying to steer it the way that I originally saw it going, I just let it be, because I realized that it was going to be super valuable with so many great tips and so many different strategies. So I hope you guys felt that way, and I hope you got a lot out of that episode. Make sure if you haven't listened to it yet that you go back. Make sure you get his book, one of the top books on listening in the entire world. It's already sold over 100,000 copies. It's called Just Listen: How to Get Through to Absolutely Anybody. And it's such an important book to read in terms of all communicating strategies, no matter who you're communicating with. And there's a lot of different numbers of tips that you can get from this episode. You can get 3 questions to ask yourself after having gone through a conversation to see how successful you were in that conversation. There's 3 Ds of visionary leadership, which are awesome. 4 things that you can be with your boss, 4 steps to getting loyal customers, and so much more. But with that being said, those are not going to be really my takeaways. One of them will be, but let's get right into takeaway number 1. Takeaway number 1 is stop and say, And really, he talked about this as a very great way to be deliberate and making sure that you're taking in what the other person is telling you. Like, so many times when we're communicating with somebody else, we're so busy deliberating what it is that we want to say next, and we're not actually listening to whatever it is that they're saying, and we're not really processing it. But a lot of times, if after the person you're speaking with is finished speaking, if you stop and say, then you really are showing the other person that you're considering what they said, and you're using that to formulate your response. Because you've got to realize you can't form your response beforehand, because you don't know how you're going to react, or you don't know what thoughts you're going to have until you completely hear what they have to say. So this is a huge takeaway that I know I'm going to start using in my daily conversations with everybody else, making sure I take the time to pause and consider what they say and use that in my response. Takeaway number 2 is how to be relevant. I really love this one. So this is the 4 things that you can be with your boss, and it's just kind of how to be relevant in general. And number 1 is be relevant. 2, be clear, be concise, and be gone. Anything that I've realized that is super successful in terms of like leadership, or in terms of thought leadership, in terms of and a successful book, everything is relevant to the time. It is helpful to whoever's reading it in whatever scenario that they're currently in. It's clear. Like, you don't have to think too much in order to really grasp what it is the person is trying to communicate. They're concise. It's not too long-winded. It's super to the point, and then they're be gone. Like, this is more pertainable to when you're actually talking with a boss. Don't overextend your stay. So again, be relevant, be clear, be concise, be gone. Takeaway number 3 is what made you smile today. So he just had a TED Talk released like literally 3 weeks ago, and it's awesome. So he is starting this global movement called What Made You Smile Today, and he has wristbands for it, and he is every single day challenging himself to ask one person that question, what made you smile today? And then he's challenging that person to ask that question to somebody else. And what it does is it allows them to actually have another smile on their face when they're recalling the scenario that made them smile, and it makes you feel good because you're bringing joy to that person during their day. And this is actually something that I've started to implement in my life, because I am starting to ask every single podcast guest that I have on before we start the interview. I always ask, what made you smile today? Because I feel like it's such a great way to connect, and they always tell me something a little bit more personal about them, and that way I have a personal connection, another conversation point that I might be able to talk about either before the episode or during the episode itself. So again, guys, my 3 takeaways. Number 1 is stop and say, because when you're talking to somebody else, you can't formulate your response until you fully consider whatever it is that they have said. So you have to make sure the person is completely done with what they're saying. Take a moment to digest it, to consider it, to deliberate it, and then formulate your response after that. Takeaway number 2 is how to be relevant. It's be relevant, be clear, be concise, and then be gone. Be relevant to whatever it is that you guys are focused on right now. Make sure that you're not overly complex. Make sure that you're not too long-winded, and make sure you're gone. And then takeaway number 3 is what made you smile today. This is something that I started to ask people who are coming on my podcast beforehand, because it's a great way to connect, and it's a great way for you to connect with a complete stranger or with somebody that you see on a daily basis. Like, randomly throw this at them. What made you smile today? And see how it makes them react and see how it makes you feel in return. So again, guys, hope you guys liked this 3 takeaways episode. Hope you liked the interview with Dr. Mark Goulston. I would love to hear your favorite takeaway, or maybe one of your favorite tips that he gave that you might start to try to implement into your life today. Make sure you rate and review the podcast. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't yet. Make sure you share it with a friend so we can spread this word and we can share all these great messages and tips out there so everyone can get a little bit closer and closer to their best you.